Hi, my name's Paul Messina, and I'm going to talk about the bioregion that I decided to do my project on and the food system that I created that goes inside this bioregion and why I think it would work well and be culturally significant and flourish, really. So I chose the Northeast American forest, and this is the bioregion of the Northeast, and it's more centrally focused in that Northeast, that Canadian down through the middle Atlantic of the United States area. And this is where I'm personally from, so it's a little more near and dear to my heart. And it's more meaningful to me because my grandparents, they came with my dad when he was really young, and they were able to find a home in this region, more specifically in this northern Piedmont ecoregion. And this is the area that I really want to focus in on, because for me, I have a huge influence from the Staten Island area, where my family had resided and where most of the cuisine that I grew up on was really created. And I just think it's incredibly interesting how this whole bioregion in this area can really be created the way that I'm going to create it. This northern Piedmont ecoregion, it's really quite eye-opening, as when it was originally founded, when people originally came here, there was much farmland, and there was a lot of influence of marsh and natural water as it's close to the coast. And I've been blessed to be around the coast my whole life. I find the water very interesting, but I also think it's super interesting because this bioregion is the Northeast American mixed forest. So one of the things I find interesting is that area is heavily influenced and impacted by surrounding trees. And these trees, it's interesting because there's always been a lot of oak around me, but from my research, I found there used to be so many different types of oak trees and so many different species of oak trees. But now, as you can tell, this northeastern United States is made up, heavily influenced and impacted by these big cities, these big metropolitan areas such as Philadelphia, New York City, Washington, D.C., even parts of New Jersey are very city oriented now, and like Hoboken. But if you look at the heart of this northeastern Piedmont ecoregion, it is what is called the Meadowlands. And this is New Jersey, if you've heard of the Meadowlands Stadium. And like, just looking at northern New Jersey, you really see, like, close to the border of Staten Island, this is what has impacted me, and this dichotomies of how this bioregion started out as this oak tree, this meadowland, this marshland, this grassy land influenced by tons of water, and has now become this complexity of metropolitan areas, still with tons of farmland, as dairy farming is the number one farming industry in the Northeast. And you can see it just truly perplexing to me. And my goal of this final project was to really find a food system that could survive in this bioregion and that could flourish, and that I could promote the cultural impacts of my Italian heritage that I hold so close to me from my father and his parents, my grandparents, and my mother's parents, same as well. So if you look around, I mean, so many oak trees when I was growing up, and it was interesting to me as I researched more and more about the oak tree before settlement, there's so many different types, and I also found there were so many different soil types, and this diversity is really what I want to cue in on, as this diversity of the region really shows how great it can be for farmland and how great and successful you can have, because really diversity in anything is what's going to keep it flourishing for a long time. So the word Piedmont, it means a gentle slope leading from a mountain to a flat land. And this flat land is where my food system will flourish, in this Piedmont region, in this biosystem of the Northeast American forest. So the first piece of my food system that I thought was of cultural implications, because if you can figure out these cultural implications, you can really get everyone behind your food system that's involved, and everyone support and agreeing that you're creating something marketable, something edible, and something that's also good for the environment, that will be successful and will continue for a long period of time without damaging the environment that you live on. So this is why I thought dairy farming would work out really well. And I want to pair this with orchard farming. I think these two would make a great fit together. And this is dairy farming and orchard farming are both pretty popular in the Northeast, like I said, but I think pairing them together would really work well. Orchard farming is predominantly found on grassy land, as this is the best coverage for orchard farms. So utilizing what this bioregion is home to and showcasing this grassy land to have successful orchard farming is something that I think is important. And using this grassy land and this moisture covered land to have a dairy farm would also work very well. Now, these are two things that I think that can be farmed at the same time in the same area. And they go hand in hand using the soil. And if you rotate each year, one year you have the animals, the cattle living on the one side, and you have the orchard on the other side. Every couple of years you flip-flop and vice versa. This is going to give the soil time to rest and recover, and going to give your animals new farmland to roam around. So I did a lot of research about dairy farming, and one of the main things I saw that was an issue was this mistreatment of animals. But if you farm on a small scale, and this is what I really want to focus in on, is this local idea, this idea of farming local, this idea of focusing on the culture that you're influenced by in your farming. And if you use this idea of farming correctly and treating these animals correctly for their dairy production without harming their lives and without mistreating them, then you can be successful and you can flourish. A lot of the issues that are found within dairy farming in today's society is these issues of the maltreatment of the cattle and just really using them to get as much dairy as humanly possible. Another piece that I really want to focus in on is this idea of staying local within the Northeast and focusing on this area. And so I want this to be very, very, very small scale at first and grow it organically through that. And I wanted to start with weekly town hall meetings on Sundays. This will where we're going to discuss the farming that is going on. And this is also going to be very, very symbolic of these big family Sunday dinners that Italian families have. And it's going to remind us of our culture and our heritage back in Italy, having their Sunday dinner, eating, talking, discussing what was going on their farm, discussing everything that was occurring. And we're going to talk about our dairy farming, and we're going to talk about our orchard farm. And at these town hall meetings, we're going to have every single member speak, just at an Italian Sunday dinner. We're going to go around the round table, and we're going to discuss so everyone's voice can be heard, and this will allow for the greatest diversity of thought and perspective. These two things are very important so that we can learn and grow from everyone, so that everyone can feel like their voice is heard. No one is important over anyone else. This is going to really key in on an atmosphere where everyone who's a part of this food system will feel valued and will be excited to be a part of the food system, and we will embrace the cultural pieces of this system. Now, as a fellow finance major, I think it's very important for me to think about the economical piece of this food system. Having the main center of the region being these two sides, one not over the other, but having both sides of the dairy farm and the orchard farm, that they can trade within each other. This will allow for both sides to generate value and to work in unison. So fellow community members will be able to share their ideas in these town hall meetings, where the orchard farmers talk about what they're doing, and you hear the dairy farmers talk about what they're doing as well, and you can all draw it together. But promoting trade in this food system is very important, especially for these products such as dairy and cheese and milk specifically, that are short shelf life and can perish very quickly. We need it to use up. So we're going to keep everyone in our food system stocked with these perishables and these important protein-rich goods, and we're going to trade in the food system to help share the product and create everyone in this local environment happy and healthy, while these dairy farmers will get something back from the orchard farmers when it is apple season and there is an abundance of apples and there is abundance of grapes. So being in the Northeast, Our food system will allow us to be pretty moderate climates for our cattle who are pretty used to these climate and the climate resistant. They will also use some technology to help create soil that will stay lower in nitrogen as the cattle graze. So the cattle can continue to feed off this grass and live off this land for years to come without any issues. As we said, we want it to be very self-sufficient and we want it to be very organic. And we're also going to use a manure system to help with this as well, allowing these cows to wander these meadowlands, these luscious grass that are full of nutrients and water. This will allow us to utilize this natural beauty of this bioregion, and that will allow the food system to flourish. So also the cattle in colder climates, a little bit more cold in the Northeast, they'll naturally eat more, so they can get a buffer to insulate their body heat and to keep them warmer. But we're also going to build an area to house the cattle when the temperatures do begin to drop in the winter months and when it may rain or snow, so the cattle can continue to produce and be comfortable without harming the cattle at all. And so we can be real in our food system on what we are portraying. We are culture based, and we're not going to harm the animals. So another thing is how symbolic the cheese from the cows really will be when we milk the cows and we go through the process of the food system of making the cheese. The food system is really the supply chain all the way from the cows, from the production, from the marketing. Now we have the milk from the cows, and we're going to make the cheese, and then we're going to consume the cheese, and then, like I said, with the manure, that's going to be our waste product, and we're going to reuse as much as we can. But using this piece of the cheese and creating the cheese, this will be a reminder of our Italian heritage and our culture, just similar to the mozzarella di bufalo, which is something that my ancestors and my grandparents would always make back when they were in Italy. And being able to use these cows to make this mozzarella will remind us of our culture. We're also, like I said, going to use cow dung, which is manure, to improve the soil structure, because it helps regenerate soil and it's an effective source of nutrients that's needed for the plants of all types to grow. So this is going to really focus in on the plants that are a part of our food system, and the grains and the gardens and the fruits that are grown in the orchard. And this is important for the waste portion of our food system, like I said, as reusing and recycling as much waste as possible will allow for a more efficient food system. So this structuralist idea that we talked about, this is the idea of dairy in the Northeast. And we can see that if you look at the top producers of dairy, it's not completely defined and categorized as being from the Northeast, but we can see New York and Pennsylvania are two key states for dairy production. So it's definitely structurally fit that dairy is Northeastern. And we can also see that dairy farming remains the largest agricultural sector in the northern United States, northeastern United States. So dairy is structurally very, very much defined and a part of the Northeast. And we can see the symbol of dairy if we look at a very similar system of the Amish culture. And they have their own cattle, and they milk, and they dairy farm as well. And I kind of want my food system to be somewhat inspired by this Amish culture and this idea of Amish, who are all from the Northeast and who are in this Pennsylvania area farming and living off the nutrients. And this will be symbolic of the Northeast dairy that we use in my food system. And we can see overall in this postmodern system that my dairy farm and all the things come together. I use the dairy farm and the orchard as a way for everything to come together as a whole and really make a two become one, as they're unable to overpower each other if they're working together and they're relying on each other for trade and for information and insights and for perspective. This will bring this postmodern system in my bioregion together, and everyone will be able to flourish and manage the power by having complete dichotomies, two completely different businesses that work together to create a more well-rounded product.